The Green Bay Packers are low-key a mess, and we're going to break it down on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some teams that we're a little worried about from preseason week one. The Denver Broncos had a very rusty start. The Bengals might be exactly who we think they are, but we got to start with a team that is flying under people's radar, and it's the Green Bay Packers. Now, before we dive into it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right around the corner. Make sure that you visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets. Luke, I know that you're an NFC North resident, so you probably get a little bit more Packers in the feed than your average bear, but I'm going to let Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers, who's obviously doing this every day, talk about their preseason win, and he seemed a little more concerned with things than I expected.
Matthew Golden is going to be the Packers wide receiver one sooner than later. I'm Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers, and here are three quick takeaways from the Green Bay Packers season opener at Lambeau Field against the New York Jets on Saturday night. It starts with Matthew Golden. He drew a pass interference call on Sauce Gardner, also converted on a third down. The only receiver who could catch the ball. Apparently, Romeo Doubs, a couple times matched up with Sauce, couldn't shake him. It was Matthew Golden making the one catch on a Jordan Love throw. If you include the Malik Willis stuff, 4, 5, maybe 6 drops, depending on how you want to chart it. It's not great for this receiver room that now has Jayden Reed hurt. That has to be the second big takeaway. Jayden Reed seen in a boot before the game, and Matthew Golden was the one taking a lot of those slot reps. He's also the number 2 boundary receiver right now with Dontavian Wicks hurt. This is a room that is going to have to rely on Matthew Golden, quick, fast, and in a hurry. And the third quick takeaway is this defense has some work to do without Xavier McKinney. They allowed the Jets to march right down the field. I know that preseason is supposed to be vanilla time. Jeff Hafley was not vanilla. The linebackers were out of position. They weren't able to finish pass rush reps, even when they were able to get pressure on Justin Fields on the touchdown. They had Justin Fields dead in the backfield and could not finish the play. They need to sharpen up ahead of week one.
Luke, I know you share some of those concerns, and there are some new concerns with this Jordan Love injury, which he's supposed to have surgery on a ligament in his hand and be back for week one, but it's just a lot of stuff happening at one time in Green Bay. It's a little cheesehead meltdown is what I'm naming it.
Yeah, the cheese is melting. Yeah. Look, Peter is like probably my primary source of Packers information, as with everybody on this network.
Should be, yeah.
But I think it's time to recontextualize that Packers wide receiver room, because it's no longer like last year. It was this kind of like, piecemeal, feed many mouths, everybody does their role kind of thing. Now it does seem like, for better or worse, it's going into Matthew Golden and the Pussycat Dolls. And the Pussycat Dolls are all hurt. Wicks is hurt. Romeo Doubs is hurt now. Jayden Reed's in a boot. Like, everybody's hurt. So It's going to be Matthew Golden needs to carry the passing offense unless you want this thing to run through like tight ends. And somebody else needs to step up and be, if Matthew Golden even is wide receiver one, which isn't even a guaranteed that he's that good. But let's say he is. Who's 2? Who's 3? Who's able to do that job? And are they healthy? Are they going to be able to do stuff? But it's worse for the Packers. They've had the weirdest summer, man. Like, they had this whole arc with Nate Hobbs, who also is hurt now, where also he couldn't stop hitting his own players and like causing problems in camp. And the sloppy start for the ones in the game against the Jets that Peter has broken down in a lot of detail, and he has a ton of complaints about. Matt LaFleur wasn't happy with that. And now you've got like their first practice after that. They all end up doing push-ups at the end of practice, which is not that uncommon of a thing. It's like, hey, we had a bad day. Right. Do push-ups about it. And if you look, there's some of those guys that aren't doing them. Jordan Morgan is trying to be a little sneaky. He's not doing it. Malik Heath, I'm sorry, my man. I can do a better push-up than what Malik Heath was doing in that one, okay? And I'm a podcaster. My wife can do a better push-up than that. I've seen that, okay? Like, you're the Green Bay Packers. You got to do better push-ups than that when you're doing push-ups because you had a bad day. I know it's like a boomer thing to care about, but it's like
it is.
The vibes are weird, man. The vibes are just weird. And it seems like every day I look over to Green Bay and they're like dealing with something. And by the way, Jordan Love has a thumb injury. And now, his status for week 1 is not in question, but like, I'm going to guess that he wanted to do something other than rehab a thumb injury with the next month of his time.
It's not ideal. It's less than ideal is how you would describe it.
Yeah, it's
even go
not
back
the season
earlier.
You want to be having when you fancy yourself a Super Bowl contender in the toughest division in football.
And once again, one of the youngest rosters in the NFL. It's every year. And guess what they do? They make dumb mistakes. They make dumb penalties. They had like 6 drops, like Peter was talking about in that game. And they've always had these problems with guys stepping up. That's why the starting running back of the team all at the beginning of the offseason was saying, we need a real wide receiver 1. And he's got his own teammates angry. The Packers have a weird fusion of like, they've brought in some free agents who are doing well, like a Xavier McKinney, like a Josh Jacobs, because they need to kind of supplement their young roster with some of these veterans. But it seems like some of the young players see these veterans come in and start talking, and they're like, well, I've been here for a couple of years. Who's he to come in and start saying I'm no wide receiver 1? I agree with you. The vibes are just weird with the Packers, and after multiple years of having expectations that they didn't live up to for whatever reason, it's just like, when do people start to ask questions about the Packers? Or do they just get to skate by forever and not be like, are they going to take the next step? Because it's been multiple years where, they have the youngest roster. They're far. Matt LaFleur is such a good coach. His winning percentage, it's so good. Well, when are they going to take the next step forward and be a serious contender? Because I don't think anybody right now, if you start listing teams that you think are going to win the Super Bowl, I don't think that Green Bay gets mentioned in like the top 10 teams, whether they deserve it or not. They're just not a team that I think people look at right now and are taking serious. I think they're very similar to like the Denver Broncos on the other side, who people call them like a dark horse, but they're a dark horse because they're not a serious contender.
I think I'm with you more than I am with the general public, but the general public is very high on the Packers. If you just look at the FanDuel odds, Super Bowl odds, they're like third or fourth in the whole NFC. I mean, the NFC is Lions and Eagles and everybody else according to the betting odds right now, but the Packers are kind of the next one. And
I
even
would have
just
the Rams or the Bucks there personally. It goes Rams, Bucks, and
it's Packers and Rams and
else.
Yeah, Packers, Rams, Bucks, Vikings are kind of the next 4 teams. If you just look at the FanDuel Super Bowl odds, by the way, Futures Day is coming up.
I wish I could short those Vikings odds for Futures Day. That would be great.
You very much can. You can bet under 8.5 wins. But and just on this show, Tony Wiggins had a very positive episode that came out just this morning on the Green Bay Packers. So I think people still very much believe in them. And all the stuff that we're talking about isn't necessarily a reason not to. I mean, everybody is injured is a problem, that's for sure. But that's short term. The push-ups thing, it's a weird vibe, but like nobody's going to care about that if you go win week 1 anymore, right? It's just a weird vibe. That's all it is. It's just a little.
They're a strange team this year, and that's the drops are something that I worry about. The things that I'm scared about with the Packers are their youth always shows in big moments, and they never make the critical play in the big moment because they're the younger team with less superstars and less experienced guys. And I don't really see that has changed by getting Matthew Golden as wide receiver 1, and getting Nate Hobbs at cornerback. Keyshawn Nixon is a concern. Like the Green Bay Packer fans can barely stand that guy because of acting like he's QB or CB1 and then his inability to cover in some of these practices and stuff. So I agree with you. The vibes are weird. It feels like they're ready for like an internal explosion in Green Bay, and the cheese heads could melt down. But with that cheesy joke out of the way, Luke, do want to move forward and talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, who where the Packers surprised me how discombobulated they look. I think the Bengals might be exactly who we think they are. Today's edition of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is going to give you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. You could take a flyer on JJ McCarthy for MVP, maybe the Tennessee Titans as a dark horse division winner. I would not do that if I'm being honest with you. But if that's how you're feeling, make sure that you visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. It's FanDuel. Play your game. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL, talking about some teams who we're low-key concerned about here. And the Cincinnati Bengals, I can't even put them in the low-key category. I've had my eye on the Bengals all season.
I feel like we've talked only Bengals for like 2 months.
We should be concerned about the Bengals in the preseason game. Didn't make me feel much better about it at all. And our guys over at Locked On Bengals talked about that.
I think we've all
he is just going to
had our
catch
questions about
anything
Geno
that gets
Stone.
in his vicinity on offense.
But one injury, and you're looking.
Sadly, we're not going to talk about that. Technical difficulties do arise, but the Bengals secondary and the Bengals defense had serious issues in this game against the second string offense of the Philadelphia Eagles. Tanner McKee looked like a beast against the Cincinnati Bengals defense, and there were some starters out there in the video that would have played. The Bengals, our guys over at Locked On Bengals, talked about how the secondary had some struggles. There are some injuries in the secondary. They've talked about a guy like Dax Hill coming back from injury, a guy like Cam Taylor-Britt dealing with a little bit of injury, and now Geno Stone has an injury in the secondary. So the Bengals defense already wasn't super talented. Now they're dealing with a ton of cluster injuries in a secondary that wasn't very good, and it's starting to feel like the Bengals defense is exactly who we think they are, and it's going to be something that it's going to be hard for Joe Burrow and the offense to overcome throughout the year.
Yeah, I really struggled with what I saw because I heard about it, and then I didn't watch the game live, but I went back and watched it because I was curious. Everyone was talking about like Tanner McKee. And
yeah, he was nasty.
This is an Eagles offensive attack. I know it's the Eagles, but no AJ Brown was out, no Devonta Smith, no Jalen Hurts, no Saquon Barkley. Like, the line, this was the twos. This was firmly the second team Eagles against the first team Bengals, and they drove down easily and scored a touchdown and drove down and got a field goal later. A lot of these teams will send their first team out there for one drive, get your feet wet. And it went so bad for the Bengals, they sent them back out there and said, get another one going. And again, they couldn't get the stop. So like you're getting dunked on by Tanner McKee and backups. And it's not because, there's like this secret hidden wealth of a bunch of like Jahan Dotson is wide receiver 1 on that
right,
team.
It's not like they're so deep on the second string.
Yeah. And the problem was you got linebackers out of position. You got guys overrunning to the flats. You got imprecision in your zone defense. I know things are vanilla. Like Peter said about the Packers, it's vanilla time, right? And
you would
defense
think that
is
would
never
create less. There would be less little mistakes because you're playing vanilla stuff that you've played for most of your career, and it's not that difficult to execute because you're not being asked to do anything complex, game plan specific.
The harsh truth is this is a poorly coached unit, and I don't care who's hurt. The guy Logan Wilson was doing wrong stuff too. Like it's a poorly coached defense, and therefore it stops mattering to me exactly how much talent you have there. Because if they're coached to do, if they're not consistently doing the right thing, you can be Thor. You can be Captain America. If you overrun the flat, that dude's catching it.
Yeah, but, and I wonder, we talk about the talent, and then you're talking about the coaching. They bring in Al Golden from the college ranks, and Golden was a linebackers coach for the Bengals for a while before he went, and I think he went directly to Notre Dame to be their defensive coordinator at Notre Dame and had their defense looking good, and then comes back and gets an opportunity at the big chair. And I just wonder, it's like, have you ever had the substitute teacher get promoted to be the full-time teacher? They never really quite grab the reins of the classroom like the initial teacher would, because it's just always in the back of your head that, hey, this was the sub. So when you knew that your defense was at its absolute apex in 2021, when the Bengals were going to the Super Bowl and all of that, and you know that, hey, we had Lou Anarumo, who was in charge of that, and he was the one pulling the strings. I was in the meeting rooms with him. He was the defensive coordinator, and now he's gone. And a guy who was, his employee who was under him is now all of a sudden back after leaving and gets elevated. Why are you looking at him and being like, oh yeah, he's going to be better than the guy who I know was better than him and was his boss? I think that could cause some concern in the locker room when you already have it's hard to even say a lack of talent. I say a lack of talent, but Dax Hill is a first rounder. Miles Murphy was a first rounder. Now they have Shamar Stewart. He's a first rounder. They don't have Trey Hendrickson out there, of course, right now, so you can't hold that against them. But it's not like the Bengals defense hasn't been invested in. It's not like they don't have like high-end capital put into that defense. So it's hard to say that they don't have enough talent there. I wonder if they actually didn't just downgrade in defensive coordination with Al Golden.
It could be the case. The thing you have to learn about the NFL is never say it can't get worse. It always can. I'm like 10,000 foot view, right? This is going to be a long build. And I can't stop thinking and comparing to those mid 2010 Saints that went 7-9 every year because their defense couldn't get it together. And what it took for that team to pull out of it and become a contender again was the 2017 draft where they got Marshawn Lattimore and Marcus Williams and Alvin Kamara. And they just had this crazy draft. One of these things that happens, for a team once every 40 years.
Changes things. Yeah.
And changes things. And it kind of feels like the Bengals just need to do that, which is like a really tough thing to need. Or they need, 6 years to build that defense back up. And I'm really, really getting nervous if I'm a Bengals fan about how much of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase am I wasting on a defense that might be, bottom 5 in the league year in and year out and having to, struggle to be 500 and be a 7th seed while the Ravens win the division every year. And what can we do about that now? Like they need to do something really aggressive to change the fortunes of the defense just to get it to average, because I don't think you can just say, oh, all right, well, we'll plug a couple holes in free agency in the draft. I think you need to get really, really aggressive next year. And unfortunately, that's what they needed this year. And we're already seeing evidence that it hasn't worked.
And you know what I would do to start that process? I would pay Trey Hendrickson because it is certainly
one would think
only going to be worse if you don't have him out there at the beginning of the season. And the Bengals cannot afford more slow starts, which is the reason that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and guys like that are out there right now, because they got to change the slow starts that they've had the last few years that have put them in holes, and then they haven't been able to dig out of them, and then they're wasting those years like you're talking about. So they got to find a way to get the Trey Hendrickson thing taken care of, because the defense only seems like it's getting worse. Now, a team talking about getting worse, the Denver Broncos are one of those teams where everyone's really, really excited about them. And I think the Broncos are going to be really good too. But they've had a strange start to the preseason here, and there's some worry about a rust factor in year 2. Today's episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. Look, it's the best time of year, folks. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me, Luke, are going to be playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. Yahoo has been doing this for so long, and they have a great draft day experience. The app is absolutely fantastic. The things that really matter in your fantasy football league, the draft day experience, and then the app you use throughout the season, and they're a home run on Yahoo, and it's probably because they've been doing it for 28 years. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're into the classics, you could still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL, looking at some teams that we're a little nervous about After 1 week of the preseason, we talked about some of the injury issues and play concerns in Green Bay. We talked about the Bengals defense struggling out of the gate like we thought it might. Now I want to talk about a team that is kind of bubbling under the radar, okay? And it's the Denver Broncos. Now, before I get into it, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. We just told you where you can play your fantasy football at Yahoo Fantasy, but now where should you get your fantasy advice? Make Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast your second listen with hosts Vinny Iyer and Kate Majuk. Listen every day as they prep you for your fantasy draft so that you can become the most informed fantasy manager and take home your league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. But the Denver Broncos came out and looked pretty rusty in their opening preseason game, and our guys from Locked On Broncos talked about the bad start.
A lot of rust that they're going to have to shake off going into week 2 of the preseason.
Yeah, a lot of rust, Cody. Sean Payton said after the game, average to below average from his starters. So anybody that thinks our observations are going to be overreactions at this point, just know that the head coach himself said average to below average from the starters. I was really underwhelmed, Cody, from the very start of this game. It's disappointing when you're going up against another team's backups that you come out, you give up a 50-yard play, Jaquan McMillan in coverage. I know you'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But you give up a touchdown to the Mac Jones-led 49ers offense. I know those guys are paid to play. I know Jones has been to a Pro Bowl, but this is supposed to be the number 1 defense in the NFL. We all expected them to make a big statement out there, and then the offense just struggled to really get anything going. They were struggling with the 49ers coverage scheme. They were struggling when the 49ers sent blitzes. I mean, it was just not great. It was not crisp. It was not what we expected from a team with all these expectations going in, but you know what? It might end up being the best thing for them because last year they had to come into every game with a chip on their shoulder. Underdogs every week, including the preseason. Everybody's saying you got the worst roster in the league. Now everybody's telling you, oh, you're a dark horse Super Bowl candidate. You know, you're one of the best up-and-coming teams in the league. Sometimes you need a little kick in the pants to kind of get you going again because this was a humbling, in my opinion, it was a humbling experience. If I was on the team, I'd be upset with the way that this night went, Cody.
I know that it wasn't a great preseason game for the Broncos, and obviously our guys from Locked On Broncos would tell you that themselves as they just did. But my concerns about the Broncos aren't so much with the Broncos. It's just natural regression. You know, they kind of overdid it last year and what people thought they were capable of. And when you start to look at the AFC playoff picture and you think about the AFC North with the Bengals, the Ravens, the Steelers, you think about the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills, will the Patriots be better this year? The Jets could be a scrappy team. You go to the AFC West where the Broncos are, and you know you got the Chiefs, and then you got the Chargers as well. I just feel like when you're starting to make a list of who's going to make it in the playoffs in the AFC, there are teams every single year that drop out of the playoffs. It's never 7 for 7, exactly the same. And if you're looking at teams that might drop back a little bit out of the playoffs, I think the Broncos are one of the teams that you have to at least include in that discussion of teams that could fall out.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype around this, and I think, you know, hey, year 2, Bo Nix, year 2 in the system with Sean Payton. We always have belief in Sean Payton. I get it. I think, again, it's kind of only vibes. It's like, yeah, there's some like weird stuff that happened in the team hotel that Sean Payton didn't like but won't tell us about.
Yeah, he had a weird quote, Luke, that we should tell. He said there were like 14 things I didn't like on this road trip, and none of them were on the field. And it made a lot of people raise their eyebrow.
Right, like what happened in the but he later complained that there was a festival outside the hotel and like they couldn't sleep. And they got in late because the plane was delayed, and then they like needed to stay up. And he's like, you know, and our sleep scientists say that it takes this many days to recover when you're up that late. And so it seems like it's operational stuff. And I don't know how many of those 14 things have to do with like the roster, the players, the actual football product. Like you might be mad at an equipment manager or something, you know, which is probably not the kind of thing we as media need to be too locked in on. But you do want to see, you don't want to see like Jaquan McMillan give up a 50-yard bomb down the sideline. You know, you don't want to see your first team struggle that much. And I think for all of these teams that we've talked today, talked about today. We had this debate last week about who should play preseason, right? And it seems like everybody is, most people put like their starters or at least some of their starters out. Maybe sit the true superstars, but you've put a lot of the first team out to kind of get that dress rehearsal. And I think some of these might want another go. I kind of want to see Bo Nix go have a comfortable series, even if it's just 1, 2, third, first, second, third down, and then you're done. And that's it. But go have a comfortable series where you're not like running backwards into the end zone and throwing a really bad safety.
Yeah.
Like maybe don't have that taste in your mouth going into, don't have that be the thing. Right. And try to get something a little bit more normal under your belt just to knock that rust off. It's okay to be rusty. It's okay to come out first preseason game, be sloppy, have a bunch of things to fix, so long as you fix them. And I think an in-game drive for some of these guys, or for the Packers, right, to get especially those wide receivers, to give, well, it won't be Jordan Love, but to get a sense of who's going to step up, or the Bengals give that defense a little bit more of a chance to fix their mistakes and prove that they've fixed those mistakes as you choose who's getting starting jobs and stuff. I think it's like work is needed, but it's very early. And so while I am very much concerned about all three of these teams, I don't think I'm panicking about any of them.
You know what, Luke? I don't think I want to panic either, but I push back on it's early. It's not early anymore. The season is in 19 days. A lot of joint practices are ending. Yeah, 19 days.
What?
19 days. So, not to do some...
It's definitely it's like a whole month.
A lot of...
Is there not a bye anymore?
Right. We got it'll be this weekend, the preseason games. The next weekend's the 3rd. There's a bye, and then it's there. So, I mean...
Oh, my God.
About 3 weeks out. So I've been making this point on Locked On Titans that, the Titans have been looking like the 3-14 team that they were last year. And a lot of people are pushing back on me like, no time to panic. They have a lot of time, but no, they don't. Like, the season is right around the corner. So some of these teams with issues, I agree with you. They need to get those guys back out there in preseason game number 2 and week 2 as well, and start to iron out some of these kinks, because some of these teams just didn't look good enough in the preseason first game. And it's just preseason. But again, my point is time is coming quickly and the season will be here soon. But, with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Brain, Luke Braun, as we tell you every episode. Thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.